So here's a little bit about how I prepare a horse to get bridled. And this is my Mustang Marlin, who hasn't had too much experience with a bridle. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that he's comfortable with me handling his head. Some horses can get pretty defensive about that, so I want to make sure he's comfortable just with me touching it, petting it, and then I'm going to ask him to tip his nose in toward me and soften. And when he backs up, I just go with him. I don't pull or add any extra pressure. So there, I'm tipping his nose toward me, making sure he's comfy there. Want to make sure I can handle his ears, his muzzle, any part that the bridle is going to touch. Want to make sure he's prepared and understands what that feel means for him. And when he lowered his head and softened there, I released. Now I want to make sure that I am able to put my finger in his mouth because the bit's going to go in there. I want to make sure that that produces a licking and chewing because he needs to be able to pick the bit up himself. I want to do it in such a way that doesn't cause him any worry. I'm not going to hold him. I'm not going to restrict him. And make sure he just feels pretty good about that. And I'm in no rush to get this bridle on. I'm thinking more about preparing him to bridle rather than getting it on right now. So he's feeling pretty good about bringing his head around to me. I'm just waiting for him to soften here. You can see his eyes start to soften, and now the neck is about to soften. And that's where I'll release him. So I'm going to take a few seconds here to start to organize my gear. I'm not even thinking about putting the bridle on until I have my ducks in a row. So I want to make sure that I have the lead rope accessible but not interfering with him. So I'm going to put it on my right elbow. That's the one closest to him. I'm putting the reins over my left elbow, and I'm making sure that the bit and the brow band and all of the pieces of gear are organized. Then I'm going to bring his head toward me, and I'm just going to bring the head stall over his face. And the important thing is that I don't bump his eyes or his nose or do anything that causes him discomfort. I just want to make sure I can bring that head stall up, keep his nose tipped toward me, and let him relax. Then I'm going to bring just the bit under his chin. I don't need to get it in his mouth. Just bringing it under his chin, waiting for him to relax. We've got a bug here, so I want to make sure I go with him and don't interrupt him. He's swatting a fly. And then when he softens back to center, over near me, I'm going to take the bridle off. Now I'm going to work on putting the bit in his mouth. So again, I bring the head stall up, bring the bit in position. He's got a bug. I'm making sure that I'm not poking his eyes, bumping his teeth. I'm going to put my finger in his mouth and just help him open to find for that bit. He's not quite sure how to reach for it yet, but that's okay. And then I take it out. So I'm doing this little piece at a time. Doesn't matter how quickly I get this bridle on, it matters how he feels about it. So again, I'm going to bring this bridle in position. I'm going to stick my finger in his mouth and help him find the bit. That went a lot smoother than last time. I'm giving him a couple seconds to get used to it. And now I'm going to hold this brow band up so that bit doesn't fall down and hit his teeth. I'm going to stick one ear in, the outside one first, and then the inside one, making sure I don't crumple them. Now I'm going to show you how I take the halter off with the bridle still on. So you're going to untie this knot. And then I'm going to bring the noseband of the halter down his nose into his mouth like I was putting it on like a bit. It's going to go up and behind the bit and then out through the bottom. I like to keep my halter on to make sure I have a little more control. And then as I take the bit out, you can see that I don't let the bit just drop. I let it smoothly fall out of his mouth with control. I have my hand on it to make sure that nothing hits his teeth. So this is a more educated mare, and she's a little bit more proficient at bridling, but I don't take anything for granted when it comes to what a horse should be able to do, so I'm just double checking how she feels about bringing her head around, having her muzzle and head and ears handled, all the things I'm going to need to do in order to bridle her. And you can see she's pretty happy about it. She's pretty content with me handling her mouth. I make sure that I can stick my finger in her mouth and open her jaw, touch her muzzle. And I like her head to be right around here, kind of snuggled around me so that I can reach her for bridle. Because she's pretty proficient at this, I take her halter off and leave it around her neck. And there's my pony standing in front of the camera. So I'm going to bring the bridle up to her face just like I did with the last horse. And I'm going to use it to bring her face around. Then I'm going to put the bit under her chin just like I did. And then I'm going to put my thumb in her mouth. And when she's ready, her jaw will open, her tongue will come out, and it'll scoop up the bit just like that. I don't push it in. Then I put outside ear in, inside ear, making sure not to crumple up the ears. And here's a close-up of how I put the bit in. So you can see my thumb goes in her mouth. I've got the bit position. I make sure it doesn't hit her teeth. When she's ready, she's going to open her mouth and scoop that bit up. And then I put the ears in nice and gentle. And I just take a second to arrange all that gear. And here's a close-up of how I take it out. I guide the bit out and make sure it doesn't hit her teeth.